The Krethax Empire had ruled the outer spiral for 3 millennia, their reputation as apex predators unquestioned. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with obsidian scales and razor-sharp claws that could pierce battle armor, they were the galaxy's most feared warriors. Their young, however, were vulnerable, a closely guarded secret that the Empire protected with religious fervor. Commander Zarketh of the Bane Imperial Guard couldn't believe what his thermal sensors were showing him. The rebel attack had come without warning, tearing through the diplomatic compound on Station Epsilon 7 like a plasma storm. The Krethax delegation had scattered, fighting desperately to reach the evacuation shuttles. In the chaos, the ambassador's 3 cubs, barely 2 cycles old, had been separated from their parent, trapped in the eastern wing as enemy forces closed in. The elite guard had been fighting for 6 hours to reach them, cutting through layer after layer of rebel positions. When they finally breached the nursery chamber, weapons raised and ready for the worst, Zarketh froze. A human sat in the center of the room, her back against the wall, head tilted forward in exhausted sleep. Dr. Sarah Chen, the station's xenobiologist, still clutched a maintenance plasma cutter in one hand, its charge completely depleted. The other arm was wrapped protectively around the smallest of the 3 Krethax cubs, who chirped softly against her chest. But it was the scene around her that made Zarketh's blood run cold with something he rarely felt: awe. 12 rebel soldiers lay scattered across the chamber. Not dead. Humans had strange prohibitions about killing when alternatives existed, but incapacitated in ways that spoke of desperate, intelligent violence. Welding marks scarred the doorway where she'd sealed it partially shut, forcing attackers through a narrow choke point. Environmental controls had been hacked to drop the temperature to near-freezing levels, giving the cold-blooded Vesper rebels hypothermia. A sparking electrical panel showed where she'd rigged a trap that had clearly caught several attackers by surprise. The walls were scorched with plasma fire, all of it directed inward. She'd held this position for hours. The 3 cubs, Thix, Cora, and little Ven, huddled around the sleeping human like she was their mother. Thix, the eldest, had positioned himself at her feet, his juvenile claws extended in a protective stance he'd clearly learned by watching her. Cora rested against her left side, and Ven, the smallest, was curled in her lap, his tiny tail wrapped around her arm. "Stand down," Zarketh ordered his squad, his translator struggling with the emotion in his voice. "She's friendly." Lieutenant Vexari approached cautiously, scanning the human with her medical suite. "Commander, her stress hormones are off the charts. Adrenaline levels that should have killed her hours ago. She's running on something her species calls spite and coffee, according to her personal log. Multiple minor wounds, second-degree burns, severe exhaustion. She should be unconscious." "She is unconscious," Zarketh observed dryly. "Yes, but she stayed conscious far longer than biology should have allowed." Vexari's mandibles clicked in admiration. "The logs show she found the cub 7 hours ago, just after the initial attack. She's been fighting continuously since then." Zarketh knelt carefully, studying the human's face. She couldn't have been more than 30 standard years old, small even by human standards, with dark circles under her eyes and soot streaking her cheeks. A researcher, not a soldier, yet she'd held against trained killers to protect children that weren't even her species. The station's fragmented AI chimed in through damaged speakers. Dr. Chen's last recorded message: "6 hours ago. If anyone finds this, the cubs are alive. I don't care what happens to me. Just get them out safely." Thix suddenly hissed, his juvenile crest flaring as the cub noticed the armed Krethax warriors. He positioned himself more firmly over Sarah's legs, ready to defend her against his own kind. "Peace, young one," Zarketh said gently in the cub's tongue, a dialect rarely used outside Krethax family nests. "We are here to help. She is safe now." The cub hesitated, then chirped a question that made every warrior in the room go still. "Is she our pack mother now?" Zarketh had no answer for that. In Krethax culture, pack bonding was sacred, instinctive, and irreversible. These cubs had imprinted on the human who'd protected them through the longest night of their short lives. "We need to move," Vexari urged. "Rebel reinforcements." Sarah's eyes snapped open, and in one fluid motion that spoke of pure instinct, she'd raised the depleted plasma cutter toward the perceived threat before her conscious mind caught up. Recognition flooded her features, followed by profound relief. "The cubs," she rasped, her voice destroyed from hours of shouting and smoke inhalation. "Are they safe?" Zarketh assured her, offering a clawed hand. "Thanks to you, Dr. Chen." She looked down at the 3 small forms pressed against her, and her eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't let anything happen to them. They were so scared. They kept calling for their parent, and Her voice broke. "I couldn't leave them." Zarketh helped her stand, noting how she swayed but refused to fall. Vexari immediately began treating her wounds while the cubs clung to her legs, unwilling to let their protector out of sight. "The ambassador?" Sarah asked. "Alive. Injured but alive. Thanks to you, his entire bloodline survives." Zarketh paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Dr. Chen, do you understand what you've done? You've created a life debt. You've pack-bonded with ambassadorial cubs. In Krithak's culture, this means—" "I don't care about politics," Sarah interrupted, running her hand gently over Ven's tiny head as the cub chirped happily. "I just care that they're okay." And that, Zarketh realized, was perhaps the most human thing of all. In a galaxy built on alliances of convenience and calculated risks, humanity acted on something far more dangerous and powerful. They simply cared. Later, when the reports were filed and the Galactic Council demanded explanations for how a single unarmed human had held against 12 trained soldiers, Zarketh's response would become legendary. She had something to protect. For humans, that makes them invincible. Ambassador Kraeth would arrive hours later, crushing Sarah in an embrace that would have killed most species, tears streaming down his scaled face as he was reunited with his children. The cubs refused to leave Sarah's side, and the ambassador didn't try to separate them. The pack bond was complete, and the galaxy learned once again why humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their absolutely unreasonable refusal to abandon those who needed them, no matter the cost.